Hamas has the right to defend themselves.
Fuck the Jews! No, so we're UK based.
Hi, I'm Jack.
I'm Felix.
And we're here today at the Free Palestine protest to chat to people about why they're here and what they think about the whole Israel-Palestine situation.
Yeah, we've been walking around, we've seen some interesting flags, such as queers for Palestine, so we're going to hopefully have some interesting conversations with people, get their thoughts on the whole conflict, and hopefully have some good chats.
Hope you enjoy. Today with Hannah, who's at the Free Palestine protest at a Socialist Workers' Party? Socialist Party stand. So you spoke about the Israeli rocket attacks. Would you condemn the rocket attacks coming out of Palestine as well? Or what's your opinion on that situation?
I completely understand, given the nightmare that they face, why they feel like putting rockets across Israel is helpful. I don't think it is helpful, because while I can understand it, and that it's very small compared with what the Israeli state are doing to them, the problem with it is it unifies the Israeli Jewish population behind the Israeli government, whereas I think the possibility exists to split them away.
Justify how Israel's responded because of Hamas. So Hamas is shooting out of schools, they're shooting out of hospitals. Do you support Hamas, condemn Hamas? Where do you stand on?
I don't think that Hamas offer a way forward for the Palestinian people, and I think what's needed is a mass democratic movement organised from below, and Hamas is not that, it's completely top down.
Alright Liam, so we're down here chatting to some of the protesters at the Free Palestine protest. What's your reason for coming down?
Well, I mean, obviously I've seen everything that's going on in the news, and I think the last time I remember anything like this in Israel-Palestine was around 2014. I was quite a bit younger then, I was still a teenager. And I remember then it really affected me, and this time as well, it's kind of like, it's a story that whenever it comes up, it just feels incredibly futile, and like you know that once the violence ends, it's not going to be made any better. Do you know what I mean? It's not going to fix itself, and so I think like, just kind of showing support that there are millions, if not billions, of people in the world that are kind of lending their sympathy to people in Palestine is really important.
Yeah.
Even if the kind of global players aren't, then people are.
So what are you here supporting specifically then, would you say?
I'd say I'm supporting, well, I'm against, I'm against the rockets that Hamas are firing, but Israel has has the Iron Dome that is paid for by America, and it has the means to defend itself. Of course, there are still people dying in Israel, and that's tragic, but I'm against the onslaught that is in retaliation to what is ultimately, Israel ultimately have the kind of ability to defend themselves against.
Yeah. Would you defend their right to defend themselves?
I think, look, they have the Iron Dome. It's paid hundreds of billions of dollars from America, from the West. It's paid for. They're able to defend themselves. There's no justification for the attack and the bombing of hundreds, possibly soon to be thousands of innocent people. Old people, men, women, children, whatever. And also the violence that we saw the other day in Bat Yam against civilian Israeli Arabs is, I've never seen anything like that before. It was disgusting.
Yeah. But you don't think Israel has the right to retaliate, given that Gaza fired over 1,000 rockets at Israel?
Well, listen, again, I'll repeat the point, is like, Israel has a defense system that's worth hundreds of billions of dollars. It can defend itself and it does so efficiently. Also, the retaliation the right retaliation is, in my view, is from the Palestinian people who are occupied and have been for decades, nearly, over kind of 60 years. And so the idea that the right retaliation is with the Israeli government is kind of like skewing the argument slightly.
Okay. And how do you foresee like a solution? What would be your, obviously it's very complex, but like what does Free Palestine mean to you, I suppose?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a mad question. I kind of think I think a one-state solution is the only way possible.
One Palestine state solution, or?
Yeah, that there should be a state that is not affiliated with either Jewish people or Muslim people. It should be a state for Christians, Jews, and Muslims, where they can live.
Could you explain why you're carrying sort of a Nazi badge next to the Israeli flag?
Because I believe that the Israelis created the apartheid Nazi state, which is they're doing worse than what Hitler done. If anything, Hitler done nothing what the Israelis are doing now to the Palestinians. Going and taking over their land and then killing them and oppressing them, taking over their houses and all these bad things, you know what I mean? Obviously, I'm not a Palestinian.
Do you not think that sign could be quite offensive to Jewish people, obviously because of the Holocaust and because Hitler targeted Jews?
No, you know what thing is, this is nothing against the Jewish people. I've got respect for the Jews, but the Zionists are the biggest terrorists in the Middle East, the destabilized in the Middle East. They're the main cause of all the trouble and the problem in the Middle East.
Okay. Yeah, I guess some people would interpret it as anti-Semitic.
Israelis are taking over the Palestine. Since 1940, they've been taking over the land and they're kicking them out from your own land. Imagine if someone come around your house, kicking your family out, they walk into your house telling them it's your house. You get what I'm saying? So this has been happening there every single day, man.
Yeah, I guess some would argue it was the Jews' land originally and it was given to them.
Oh, yeah, apparently the God gifted. Yes, come on, man. That's the bollocks, man. Come on, you know that. Yeah, apparently they just claim that God gave it to them. Which God gave it to them?
I guess at the same time, though, is when you go back to 1948 and the borders were drawn up, Israel was given land, Palestinians were given land, Jordan, Egypt, but there was the 6 Days War and then multiple wars from there where the Arab countries attacked Israel and then they only pushed out and expanded after these wars. They didn't
Why do you think they attacked Israel?
They attacked Israel because they didn't want a Jewish state in the area.
Oh, because the Jews are coming over, they're taking them. Where these people come from? Come from all over the Europe and there. They don't look like Arab. If you look at them, they don't look like Arab. They just come from Europe, America and Europe after the World War II and they invaded the country, taking over the land and they come on. When the Palestinians defend themselves, they call them a terrorist. If someone comes to your house and taking over your land and taking over your house, obviously you got right to defend yourself.
So would you say you agree with the rocket attacks on Israel from Palestine then?
Yeah, they're different. Yes, you mean the Hamas?
Hamas, yeah.
Hamas has the right to defend themselves.
Yeah, we think it's our responsibility. I think it's our responsibility as, concerned members of the community to come out and make our voices heard. And yeah, we want to support the resistance and to see Palestine free.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think I definitely agree with you. There's a clear power imbalance, but when we talk about oppression, so 1.9 million Arabs live in Israel, and under the law they have the same rights as the Israelis, whereas Jews, for example, are practically banned from Gaza and Palestinian-owned areas of the West Bank and Yemen and Jordan, for example. In fact, if you were to sell land to a Jew in Gaza, the punishment for that is the death penalty.
And the Zionist project is all about creating a state which is essentially a racist state, because it's saying, it's about saying that.
To go back to my earlier point, Jews are literally banned from Jordan, Gaza, the West Bank.
Created these,
Lebanon.
but they've created these.
But if we're
these,
talking about
these kind of
apartheid,
prisons in themselves, and I've been to Palestine and I've seen,
Sure.
and there's literally armed Israeli guards all around within East Jerusalem, and the idea that the wall was created by Israel. Actually, for thousands of years, Palestinians and Jews and Christians, all Arabs, all lived together. And it wasn't really until the last 100 years that we've started to see that we've seen the division, and that has come from the West, and that's come from the Zionist ideology, which is a racist ideology. And I'll say that as I've got a Jewish family, but it's that the idea of actually having a state for only one whatever religion of people, any religion, into itself is quite a racist idea. Where you do actually go to Palestine and you do still see Christians living alongside Muslims, but I don't think it's so much that when you speak to the Muslim community in Palestine, they say they wish that it could live alongside the Jewish community. That's what they say. The problem is it's the Jewish community, or not the Jewish, the Zionist community that don't want that.
Right,
They want to wipe them out. So if
Well,
someone's coming to you with a gun, are you really going to say?
Well, the Israelis have pushed for the two-state solution. They've either proposed or accepted it on 5 occasions throughout the last century, and every time it's been rejected by the Palestinians.
I think as far as Hamas goes, again, I'm not saying I think that necessarily they have the answers ultimately, but do I defend the right for people to defend themselves in this situation? Absolutely.
I want to ask you, Deborah, is why are you here today?
I protested against apartheid in South Africa. I'm protesting against apartheid in Israel and Palestine.
So again, lots of people have been throwing the word apartheid around. How would you justify using it with Israel? Because some would argue, say in South Africa, you saw genuine segregation based on racial terms. But in Israel, you get Palestinians who are sort of included in Israeli society as well as living in the West Bank. So do you think it's fair to say it's apartheid going on there? What evidence?
Apartheid is about so-called, well, it used to be called separate but equal. It never was. And it's not equal here. I mean, if you look at what happens in Israel and the way people are treated, for example, throwing people off their land and allowing settlers to move in, and yet not allowing equal treatment where Palestinians have been there for generations, they're being thrown off. So it's not equal.
So I guess some would say, coming back on it, is obviously you do have the situation where there are military restrictions put on in places like Gaza or the West Bank, but they are firing rockets into Israel, whereas if you have Palestinians who are citizens of Israel, you see less restrictions on them. They are able to vote, they're able to own land. I believe the third largest party in Israel is actually Palestinian/Arab. Guys, could you tell us why you're here today?
Well, we're here marching in solidarity with the Palestinian people who are suffering under terrible oppression. And people are being killed and maimed and bombed out of their homes by a racist Israeli state. And we want to show our solidarity with the people who are experiencing that oppression.
So you use the term a racist state there. Could you elaborate a bit more on that? What evidence do you have to say Israel is racist?
Well, it's clearly a racist state. Now, Palestinians are being denied access to the land that was originally theirs. They've been swept out off the land and they're not allowed back again. The Israeli state is pursuing apartheid policies as well. So it's clearly racist, we would say. And on that basis, we would support Palestinians in their rights for their fight for freedom.
Okay, cool. So again, this current situation, it was escalated. Again, the news is reporting that there were missiles coming out of Palestine into Israel, and then Israel responded. Would you condemn sort of the rocket attacks on both sides, just the Israelis, the Palestinians too? Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, everybody has got a right to to resist their oppression under the United Nations. That's the case. And so sorry, go on.
And the fact is, you're seeing that in numbers as well. The amount of Palestinian people that are being murdered by missile attacks and kids being slaughtered on the street by armed patrols is absolutely ridiculous. Israel has a structured, quote-unquote structured economy. They have the army, they have a militant force against Palestinians, so they really have the upper hand. So I think a resistance is good. I don't think violence is the key to it, but there is a time where peace will be broken to create free world and freedom.
As far as I'm aware, you have Palestinians living in Israel under Israeli protection, and they're able to vote, they're able to drive, they're able to get married. There's not so much an issue. Obviously, you have military restrictions on the West Bank, but that is only because there's military action. And you mentioned there that the Palestinians
have been driven out of their homes, aren't they? It's not true that Palestinians and Israelis in Israel are equal. They're not. Palestinians are still discriminated against. They're still second-class citizens, and that's it's clear. I mean, you can read about it all the time. You can see it on the news, and you can see at the very moment, Palestinians are being driven out of their homes. The Israelis want to create an ethnically pure Jewish state, don't they? And Judaism is not the same as Zionism. Zionism is a political project to establish a Jewish state in the Middle East. That's not.
So do you disagree with the idea of a Jewish state in the Middle East?
Well, I think there should be a single secular democratic state where Jews and Palestinians can live in peace. That's absolutely the only way in which the situation can be solved.
Sorry.
Fundamentally, we know that if Israelis are killing Palestinians, it's very unlikely that they're going to go and let them go to a shop. They're they've built walls basically around them, and they've quote unquote called them gulags, and they've forced them out, blown them up, killing them. I don't think, if you look at basic kind of civil liberties of they can go and vote, but they're still being murdered in the street.
So do you disagree as well then with the wall the Egyptians built on the other side of Gaza? just on the side of Israel?
The Egyptian state is allied to the Israeli state. Now, the Egyptian ruling class, are culpable as well. They're the people who crushed a revolution in Egypt. That the voice of the Egyptian people for freedom has been crushed by a brutal authoritarian dictatorship. They're natural allies with the Israeli state.
And last question I'll ask you, so what's your opinions on Hamas? Do you think they're a legitimate government in Palestine, or do you think they're terrorists? Where do you stand on that issue?
Well, I mean, they were elected, weren't they?
What are your reasons for coming down?
I think the main reason is obviously there's been an escalation with the killings that are going on, the policies of the Israeli state and occupying Palestinian homes, which started in Sheikh Jarrah, and also the incident that happened in the mosque. Fuck the Jews and Muslims. On the 27th night, Israeli forces came in, stormed the mosque.
So is this a call for the armies of these countries to declare war on Israel, or what's the?
I think they will have to declare a war, and that will be a threat enough for Israel to stop its hegemonistic, policies in that region.
Okay, and do you agree with Israel's? So after the events which you just mentioned unfolded, Gaza then sent missiles into Israel. Do you think that was justified, and do you agree with Israel's retaliation, or
I don't?
How do you see that?
I think the narrative shouldn't start with Hamas firing rockets. The narrative starts, a long time before that, and it starts with really the Balfour Declaration, where a country promised the land of another people to a third people. What happened to the Jewish people in Europe was a crime that Europe needed to solve. Instead, they put that burden on a third country and displaced those people from their land and gave it to the Jewish people who then, who were suffering in Europe and then were expatriated to live in Palestine. But they forgot that Jewish people have been living in Palestine for centuries, and that was a crime. So that crime needs to be reversed. You could call that country Israel, you can call it Palestine, you can call it whatever you like, but it has to have some humanity where people can live equally like they used to live before. So Jews live there, Muslims live there. It's a holy site to all people, Jews, Christians and Muslims. That site, that area, that land is holy to all those people. The Jewish people, they record in their books, all the prophets that were sent to them, and we believe in the same prophets. So there needs to be a just solution, and it's not just at all right now. It's an apartheid state right now. You can walk on this side of the road if you're Israeli, but if you're not, you walk on the other side of the road. You can go to certain places if you're Israeli, but you can't if you're Palestinian. So there is no, the current system is not fair at all.
So you say it's an apartheid state, but
that's what we're saying. Human Rights Watch have, classed Israel as an apartheid state from its policies. So that's what lots of people have been saying for a long time.
I think I personally have heard arguments on both sides, but in terms of an apartheid state, so 20% of the Israeli population are Arabs. There's about 1.9 million Arabs living in Israel.
Well, we see how they're being treated right now. There's door to door.
Yeah, I agree that there's definitely a level of social discrimination there. Yeah. But under the eyes of the law, all Arabs and Israelis have the same rights, whether it's religious rights, political rights. There's no laws that specifically discriminate against Arabs.
There are people living in Jerusalem now, Palestinians, who do not have a permit to go 5 minutes down the road to pray at the Masjid al-Aqsa. So, we've got to be fair here. There is no equality here. So Israel claims to be a democracy.
Mount, the Jews aren't allowed into the Temple Mount, right? That's a holy place for Arabs.
They go there. The Jews go to the Temple Mount. The Jews enter the mosque, and that's problematic.
So why are you here today? Could you give our audience a bit of an explanation about why you're out protesting?
Yes, I'm protesting over can I call it ethnic cleansing that's happening to the Palestinian people in the occupied Palestine.
So you use the term ethnic cleansing there. Do you have, again, some people would say that it's not ethnic cleansing going on, it's just a war. Do you have any evidence that it is ethnic cleansing?
Yeah, if you thought I was a bit hesitant when I used ethnic cleansing, because it's worse than ethnic cleansing. It's more like a religious war, occupation, colonial, name it whatever you want. It has all the ugly names on the world. Let's not get caught in the names, but it's something that should be stopped, and should be stopped by the free people of the world.
So do you think Israel's got a right to exist, or do you think it's Palestinian land?
Israel as a state, for a Zionist state for the Jewish people of Israel, no, it does not have a place in this age. I'm against, for example, I'm a leftist, I'm against all religious states, but I support free people and their right to live. Jews have been living in Palestine for hundreds of years, in Jordan, in Syria, in Iraq, and everywhere in the nation, and they were our brothers and our sisters and everything, until the Zionist program came in 1948 to make unbelievable lies. About 3,000 years ago, they had 3,000 years ago there was Jews, Christians, everything. Israel as had no, it doesn't have.
So you said you oppose religious states. Does that mean you oppose, say, Saudi Arabia as well, Iran, Iraq?
In principle, I'm against it, against any religious state. But this is not the topic is I'm against oppression of the Palestinian people.
So we finished filming here today. We've spoken to a variety of different people. Some of them were really reasonable, others less so, as I'm sure you see. I think it's disgusting. We saw someone walking along with a Nazi flag. He was the only one who'd speak to us, but we saw a few people with different Nazi emblems comparing it to Israel. It's just disgusting, offensive, and really actually quite anti-Semitic and disappointing to see.
Yeah, we've had a range of conversations, as Jack said. Some people chanting Free Palestine, some people chanting Fuck the Jews.
Fuck the Jews!
Which is, of course, outrageous, unbelievable. Some people have been more reasonable, but all in all, a good day, getting people's thoughts on the conflict that's going on, and like I say, a range of different opinions out here.
And hopefully you guys at home have really learned something and we shed a light on who is supporting this cause.